about gene editing or CRISPR-Cas. The paper this technology is based on was published in 2012.
Thank you so much for tuning in to Journey with Christian D. Evans podcast. I'm your host, as always, Christian D. Evans. Did you know, for the first time in history, the disease that comes as a consequence of old age, such as cancer, heart attacks, stroke, dementia, outweigh infectious disease as humankind's largest killers? Why am I bringing this up? Well, that's the reason why I'm bringing this up is because we have this next guest on. He is the managing partner and the co-founder of Apollo Health Ventures. They focus on enhancing health lifespan. What does that mean? Well, that's the reason why you got to listen to this episode. Apollo Health Ventures develops interventions with the potential to prevent or reverse age-related diseases and extend healthy human lifespan. Some of you guys think this is science fiction or fictional, but the reality is there are some real deep stuff that's going on right now, and we're so excited about having him on, unpacking his portfolio and what he's been doing. He has a Ph.D. in economics from the California Berkeley as the youngest and fastest finishing postgraduates in his faculty. Please welcome the co-founder and head of HR, my friend, Dr. Ole Mensching. How are you today, Dr. Ole?
Very good, thank you. I'm excited to be on the podcast.
Well, man, I am looking forward to this conversation. I am thinking so much about this, what's going on in this industry, and I really want for you, before we dive into like the intricacies of the lifespan and what's going on and the excitement. That's really what Apollo's doing, VC. Mm-hmm. I would love to help me understand and our audience your journey. At what pivot point did you start really getting this passion, this desire, and said, hey, this is what I want to spend the next 40, 60 years of my life really making an impact in this industry?
Yeah, so I joined the industry in 2016, and before that I was building up companies in all kinds of industries together with my now co-founder Niels Regge. And the thing is, we had some very good exits. Most of them in the tech space, but we were also doing at that point investments in healthcare, and we were also doing company building there. And then after having some good exits, we were really thinking of what we want to do in the future, right? So what we actually did is that we rented a room in the basement of our office building, and we met twice a week for 1 hour to brainstorm what are topics of the future and what we really want to do. And the thing is, so I'm a macro economist by training, and so first of all, I told Niels, my co-founder, what we are doing with the tech businesses. Is at the end saving transaction costs, which is not bad because in a modern economy like in the US or in Europe, 60% of the GDP are transaction costs, right? And we are taking a share out of it. So we were, for example, building meta search engines for consumer loans, for jobs, and so on and so forth. And there's a saying in German, I think it translates to English, it says, so if you wouldn't do that, the world would still spin tomorrow, right? So we wanted to do something with more impact. We were always interested in the life science field. And then, we really dived into that topic. And we also talked to a lot of professors, institutes, labs, and so on and so forth. And we just found out that at this point in time, humankind only had a better understanding of what makes people age and how to fight aging for 10 to maybe 12 years, right? So actually, we are the first generation that can really do something about aging. So, if you look in human history, even like in the first novel that humankind ever wrote or that was found, the Gilgamesh, it's a topic in the Gilgamesh, and then you can see it in all cultures that living longer and healthier was always a topic in stories, novels, and so on and so forth. But we are the first generation that can actually do something about it. Yeah, and then we started to invest our own money in that field. Then we started to invest with friends and family and did a deal-by-deal structure. Because, actually in 2016, when we got familiar with the topic and we started our work in that field, I would say more or less $0 were going into that space. If you compare it with last year, 2022, it was a downturn year for biotech. but I think 6 billion went into that space. I mean, 3 billion of that went into Altus Labs, but it just shows how the field has exploded since then. So I think we were like on the right path when we started doing the investments there. And yeah, we are thinking it's very exciting because we can really make an impact. And we also believe it's a big business opportunity.
Yeah, what I find so interesting about this is, when I was looking at to get ready for this podcast, I didn't realize that, the headway that this industry has made in, really establishing some incredible, remarkable things. I'd love for you to just touch on that a little bit for our guests to understand that this, like I mentioned in the intro, this isn't science fiction anymore. This is real stuff. This is actually happening. We're seeing some real things. So I'd love for you to just, touch on that a little bit for our audience.
Yeah, absolutely. I think everyone who's familiar with the topic a little bit knows this is not science fiction. This is solid science. But I think, in the mainstream, still people believe it's not possible to extend healthy lifespan. But I mean, of course, there are a lot of drugs on the market where we have like very good evidence that they can. For example, first and foremost, rapamycin. It's an mTOR drug, and you can see healthy lifespan extension in mice by 27% or so. The problem is that it's also suppressive for the immune system. So, for example, we have one company that is working on rapalogs, so analogs to rapamycin, that keep the beneficial effects on health and lifespan, but don't have the negative effects, for example, on the immune system. Of course, there are also other side effects. And then there are a lot of diabetes drugs where there's the ITP. I don't know if you've heard about it. It's from Rich Miller from the NIA. It's a grant program. So everyone can hand in compounds he believes will prolong a healthy lifespan, and then they are testing them for you. So of course you have to write a proposal. You can't, there must be a reasoning behind that, right? You can't just hand in a compound and they will test it, but if you have a good reasoning, they will do it. And you can see that a lot of stuff is not working, like green tea extract, aspirin. For example, metformin, which is a diabetes drug, the trial is very soon run on this drug, didn't have a significant effect. But there were other diabetes drugs that had an effect, at least in mice. For example, arquebus, which is an enzyme that is preventing the uptake of sugar in your gut. But there are also other drugs where people believe that they can already extend healthy lifespan. For example, this new kind of diabetes drugs like SGLT2 inhibitors or GLP-1 agonists. So there's very good evidence that they can do that. So for me, it's only a question of time until we have really drugs on the market that have been kind of developed for. The thing is, we are not allowed to do drugs against aging, right? Because we are coming from a Christian Jewish tradition in the US, but also in Europe. So aging is coming from God. Aging is not a disease. But as Nia Barzilai, who's running the TAME trial on metformin, said, it's the biggest risk factor for almost each and every disease out there. So of course we can develop drugs against this risk factor. And I think that in the next 5 years, we will see the first drugs that have been developed with kind of in mind having them to expand healthy lifespan. Of course, they will have other indications, but I'm pretty sure that we will also have data in humans until then. So what we are really missing in our entire industry is data in humans and also in non-human primates. Most of the stuff is done in mice, and mice are not men. But I'm pretty sure that some of these diabetes drugs, rapamycin, and also drugs that are developed right now will have an immense effect on healthy lifespan in human.
So you mentioned here, and I want to step on this for a second, you mentioned where you got that Judeo-Christian kind of philosophy a little bit in the U.S. and the Western culture, which their perception behind aging is not a disease. How do you think, by having that cultural kind of paradigm, how do you think that's going to adjust the adaptation of these products, of these kind of abilities, or these services or these companies Do you see that as a pro, or do you see that as a con, or do you think that's just more of a small hurdle that you have to overcome to make sure that this culture is more educated or aware of that?
So the thing is, I see it more as a hurdle, but I think it's also not important if we define aging as a disease or not. It is the biggest risk factor for almost all diseases out there, right? I mean, even cancer, of course, you have leukemia in children, but all the other cancers are highly connected to your age. And so, I mean, and I think nobody is doubting that age is a big risk factor for almost all diseases out there. And I also think maybe because of our tradition, because of religion, some people, they don't want to live forever, or they don't want to extend lifespan because they are thinking, it's natural that we die at some point. But I think what we can all agree on is that we want to live healthy until the end of our life, right? So we want to at least extend health span. And I mean, this is also our focus of Apollo. So our mission is to expand healthy lifespan, so to extend health span. And I mean, this is not only good for the individual, but also for society, right? Because you can save a lot of costs in the healthcare system. I mean, most of the costs that someone is producing for the healthcare system is in the very last years of the life, when people have like different comorbidities and need intensive care. And it is good for all kind of other reasons. I mean, when people stay healthy, they can work longer, they can share their knowledge. It makes more sense to invest in education because they can work longer. I think they are thinking more about sustainability, about our environment, about our climate because they live longer. Then, I mean, you can go to a very deep level of detail, right? I would even argue that older societies are more peaceful because, I mean, most of the violent crimes done by males between 17 and 35, right? So I think there are a lot of beneficial effects to it. And that's why it should be our mission as an individual, but also as a society to extend healthy lifespan.
I appreciate you sharing that. So it's at the end of the day, it's just a way to reframe it and saying, hey, at the end of the day, you still want to have a healthy lifespan at the even when you get into that 65. Because you mentioned something in regards to the cost, and you say this on your website, apollo.vc, which I found this just a staggering number. Healthcare spendings for the population with an age of over 65 exceed $2 trillion. That's not including sub 65. So that's just 65 and over in the U.S. and Europe. And you guys talk a little bit more about it. Apollo is not targeting single diseases, but the root cause of aging to increase health span and the quality of life. So I like that because you guys have been able to really focus on that perception. This is your vision. Now I'm curious, when you look at how does that affect your investing thesis, as well as maybe just also the projects that or the clear mission that you guys have as an organization.
Yeah, exactly. So we are completely agnostic regarding a first indication. The drugs that we finance or that we are developing ourselves have. So, by the way, I mean, our fund is doing normal VC investments. 50% of the money is going into normal VC investments. We only do them when we have very good syndicates, either with big pharma or with American biotech VCs. And the other half we use for company building, company formation. So we also have a studio model. So we develop drugs ourselves or in our portfolio companies that in the beginning we manage 100%. And of course, we also have portfolio companies that are doing that. So we are completely agnostic regarding the indications, but what we want to see with the drugs that we finance or develop is that they have an effect on one of the basic root mechanisms of aging. And then you can go to a lot of diseases or for a lot of indications because, I mean, these mechanisms are so basic to human biology that they are, of course, influencing a lot of diseases. And usually what we do is that we, as a first or second indication, we go for rare or orphan disease, where we have a fast track with the FDA and have a nice proof of the technology on the market. And then as the third or fourth indication, we go for bigger indications and age-related ones. And I mean, this is not a strategy we came up with. A lot of VCs are doing that strategy, but we think it is very neat. And what we really want to see is that we have drugs on the market that can influence healthy lifespan. But I mean, how they are prescribed later on or taken I mean, this is a question for the future. Maybe they are prescribed off-label, right? Or maybe the FDA will change their mind at one point. So we don't care so much at this point about that. First of all, we want to have these drugs, right?
Well, that's what I'm intrigued with is is your guys' focus a little bit more on, certain drugs or certain kind of things that individuals can take to prevent that, or are you talking more preventative measures where it's like that lifestyle and certain things, behaviors that they want to change and adjust to help them solidify more of a healthy, increasing that lifespan?
So the thing is, I mean, first of all, there's an ugly truth, I think. I mean, this is discussable, but I'm happy to have this discussion with everyone who wants to have this discussion. I think, of course, I mean, if you have like a very unhealthy life, you drink a lot of alcohol, you don't work out at all, you smoke, you can destroy your health very quickly, right? So this is not a problem. So, but between having a mediocre lifestyle and a super good lifestyle, I think there's not such a big difference. And I think that you can only really increase healthy lifespan by drugs, and we have to develop these drugs. And I mean, there are already drugs on the market, apart from the diabetes drugs that I mentioned, that have more or less this function, right? When you, for example, think about statins, they help a lot of people do not get cardiovascular diseases. So in a way, they are also longevity drugs, right? And they decrease your risk of getting cardiovascular diseases by a lot. And this is a little bit also the approach that we have at Apollo. So the interesting thing about the diseases of aging is that they all have the same root mechanisms, the same root causes, right? So, and it's much harder to cure a disease that has already established in the body, broken out, than to prevent it. So what we really want to do is to prevent age-related diseases. And as I said, they are based on the same causes, same mechanisms, and we are targeting these mechanisms. I can give you another example, which I think is very intriguing. So there's a study, and they calculated that if you would find a pill tomorrow, a pill that can heal or cure all the cancer in the world, people would only live on average 3.5 years longer. I mean, which is a lot, but it's not as much as you would think it is, right? Because, I mean, these people wouldn't get cancer, but they would very soon get another age-related disease they would die of, because you're not fixing the underlying cause, you're only fixing one disease. So what Apollo is really doing, we want to bring drugs on the market that are preventative.
And this is so interesting because, see, that's what, coming back to what you just said in that circumstance, if there was a pill that would only elongate individuals 3.5 years on average, and that's not like a big, massive,
I mean, I think it's substantial. I mean, and I mean, of course. So, I mean, if you have cancer, you really would love to have this pill, and I would also love to have this pill on the market. I mean, I don't want to argue that we shouldn't do oncology research anymore or something like that, right? I mean, all this has to be done, but I really think that we neglect to target the root causes of aging and the mechanisms why these diseases establish in the body. So I'm just saying we should focus more on that. And of course, we should also focus on curing cancer.
Gotcha. That makes sense. Now, you did mention just a few things. I know we kind of gravitate a little bit more toward diabetes. I do understand, like, we got heart disease, you got Alzheimer's, you got stroke, you got cancer. We mentioned cancer a little bit. These kind of detrimental things that I think a lot of individuals are facing that. You're on the forefront of this stuff. Like you mentioned, you want to obviously get this to market, a lot of these preventative things. With just the things that I mentioned, those verticals, Alzheimer's, stroke, heart disease, what are you seeing in regards to, products being developed to, really decrease that in people's lives so that they extend that life expectancy?
So, I mean, let me reframe that question. I think there are low-hanging fruits in the longevity industry and drugs that will be developed soon. So, I mean, if you think about age-related disease and the root causes of it, we talk about the hallmarks of aging, and I think some of the hallmarks can be targeted more easy than others. And I would say the low-hanging fruits are definitely mTOR, which you can do with rapamycin or rapalogs. Then I think the clearance of senescent cells will be also something that will be solved very soon. Then let me think what else can be solved soon. I think also the rejuvenation of the immune system is something that we at least partly can do within the next years. Rejuvenation of the thymus, rejuvenation of the bone marrow. So there are low-hanging fruits, and of course we should target these diseases or these root causes first to show traction, to show people that it really works, that we are working in a solid scientific field. And then, of course, also with time, we know more about the other hallmarks, and we can also target them better. So we have companies in all of these areas, and but at the end, I think that all hallmarks of aging can be targeted.
So let me ask you this on just a side note. Do you see any attraction or traction, I should say, in the adjusting or modifying of the genome or the DNA at a molecular level so that they can prevent some of these things? Do you see that as kind of a valid path?
Absolutely. I think it's early. I mean, if you think about gene editing or CRISPR-Cas, the paper this technology is based on was published in 2012. So still the technology had to be developed, right? So it's very early days of gene editing. But of course, I think that aging is a genetic program. And why is it a genetic program? So I believe that in our environment of evolutionary adaptiveness, or in our past, and this is true for all species, so species that lived too long, they couldn't adapt quick enough to their environment, and that's why they don't exist anymore, because they couldn't spread their genes, right? And at one point, we will know where it is written in our genome that we have to age, and we can change these parts and maybe make a big difference with that. But I mean, I think it's early. So as you know, in biotech, it's always complicated, it's always complex, and in the beginning, you might think it's more easy than when you really zoom in into the problem. So it will take time, but I think it's definitely possible, and it will be done in the future. And we will make a huge difference with these technologies.
So, because I'm big. I don't know. I've had these conversations with these individuals, and I always find this very interesting in regards to, like, yes, you see this age group right now, and that's one problem. We need to obviously help them solve those things, but also there's those that are being born that are, they're genetics, right? And if you could adjust, and that's the question, if you could adjust that genetic, and like you had a family that all had prostate cancer, which is in my line, my grandfather had prostate, his grandfather had prostate, et cetera, all the way down the line. Well, that's something that I'm like, well, if I could, have offspring, and that individual says, hey, let's go ahead and take that gene out of that individual, modify that or whatever. That's just an interesting conversation. Whether it's right or wrong, I'm not sure, but having that conversation. So are we there yet in regards to that's happening? And I'm talking a little bit on the forefront, but I know. I
think for genetic diseases, so we already have trials, and we have companies on that, right? So I think these are the first gene editing companies that we will see on the market. But the thing is, when we talk about genes, I think we should also talk about what you can do today with bad genes for your health. And I think there's a lot you can do. So everyone can do an analysis of his genes, and when you have certain risk factors, you can tackle them. So for example, if I see that I have very bad genes for cardiovascular diseases, I can change my diet, I can exercise more, and at the end I can also, of course, take statins, right? So if I see that I have these risk factors, I can do that. The same is true for diabetes. So for example, of course I did a gene analysis, and I can see that I have like all these risk factors for diabetes. So I think 68.5% with my gene profile get diabetes 2 until they are 65. So it's a big risk factor, I would say. And of course, I can do something against that. So I can, of course, cut sugar in my nutrition. I can work out. And at the end, I can also take preventative diabetes drugs. And then people always come with this argument, what if I find out that I have very bad ApoE genes, which are responsible, or which are very, very strongly correlated to the onset of Alzheimer's, right? So there's no drug out there. Can I do anything? And I think even there you can do something because, studies show that the onset of Alzheimer's is connected with how much you sleep. So, if you have these genes, you can sleep more, right? And also for these people who have like this bad gene variants, I think of course, depending on how old they are, but I also see huge progress there. And I think until they really have an onset of Alzheimer's, maybe we already have drugs or maybe even a gene therapy for that. I think you should do it. I think you should get your genes analyzed and then should take countermeasures if necessary.
Well, yeah, you're bringing up a really solid point because it's that conversation I've had individuals where I've talked to where they are just healthy as a horse. They're just rock and roll. All of a sudden they go in, they got a little pain in their stomach. They decide to go in, and then all of a sudden they got stage 3 cancer. And it's just so crazy because it's like, on the outside, or maybe you feel mentally right or whatever, but there are certain things that you could be preventative. And sometimes, kind of that whole concept of, hey, I'm going to, skate to where the puck is going. Hey, if I know that genetically we've had this in our history, in my life, whatever, there are certain red flags that I should be aware of, Alzheimer's or diabetes or whatever. So it's really interesting. I wanted to talk a little bit about regulation and kind of pivot the conversation. You mentioned obviously FDA. I've heard where there are some drugs that are actually very marketable, that are actually producing incredible stuff, but for some reason the FDA has not approved them. I do understand the FDA, it's there for a purpose, I understand, but also it does prevent some amazing things to hit market to really make an impact. So it's a catch-22, and I understand that, right? Because if they mess up and there's one bad situation, case study, whatever, they just get hammered. And I understand the stress that's on there. So I'm curious, do you see that? How does that prevent really hitting mass market and the longevity of maybe the time frame of hitting this company to mass market and go to market?
Yeah, to be honest, my perspective on the FDA is not that negative. I think that they are quick adapters. Of course, they have to be cautious because if drugs are getting on the market that are harmful for people, it's their fault, and of course they have to protect people from that. So I can understand that they are conservative, but they are. They really talk to scientists. They are looking at the markets, and if they see that something is working and then something is safe. I think they don't have a problem with changing their perspective. I give you 2 examples. First of all, the TAME trial by Nir Barzilai from Einstein College of Medicine in New York. So he raised donations for a clinical trial on metformin. So a lot of people think that metformin can prevent age-related diseases. And as I mentioned before in this podcast, Nir Barzilai and the group he's working with, they argued that aging is not a disease, but it's the biggest risk factor for almost each and every disease out there. And the FDA, and they followed this argument, and they approved a clinical trial with metformin on elderly people, with a placebo group and a group that is treated with metformin, on this risk factor of age-related diseases. And I think this is amazing. You can already see that there is a shift in mind in the regulation, right? Then a second thing which came out, I think 3 weeks ago, is so when you want to have drugs on the market, you usually have to test them in 2 animal models. And now this regulation has been changed. So you don't need this. So in some cases, and of course there are a lot of ifs, so it's not necessary anymore that you have 2 animal models. You can, for example, also do it in organoids. So that really means that the FDA is looking on what is happening in the scientific field, what is happening in drug development, and then they adjust. So I'm not so negative about the FDA. Of course, it's a constant conversation, and people have to push the FDA. But at the end, they are having the responsibility. So I have a big understanding for the FDA that they are sometimes moving more slowly. But it's not like that they are not open for arguments and for scientific proof, right? It's not the case at all, I would say.
Yeah, and I appreciate that context a little bit and that color to that because I'm a big believer in the FDA, but I understand like one mistake, the news takes it and it explodes and it's all FDA problem, but like all the other, successful, products that hit market, they don't get any credit for. So I understand that context and they've done very well thus far.
I mean, it's always a constant discussion. I mean, so are more people killed by preventing getting drugs on the market than by getting a drug on the market that is maybe not so safe, right? But I think I don't think that we should play this game. I think we should only have very safe drugs on the market, because I mean, if you have drugs on the market that are not so safe, I mean, people will lose trust in drugs. They will lose trust in the entire biotech industry. So I think here it's much better to be on the safe side than to be experimental.
Definitely. I want to dive into a little bit of your portfolio. I know you guys invested on the front end of a lot of fun, different companies. If you could maybe just take one or two or three of them, just tell us a little bit about them, and kind of understand their thesis, where they're going, and the trajectory. Because you guys have a really incredible kind of process in your investment thesis, incubator and accelerator, to be able to really help them, hit mass market. So just give us a few of those in your portfolio that you'd like to talk about and highlight.
I mean, of course, I like all the companies in our portfolio. By the way, only a fraction of them are on our website. A lot of them are in stealth mode, or we just don't want to write about them yet. But the thing is, I mean, we are pretty much working on all the hallmarks of aging. And yeah, maybe I talk about one of our company building projects, Samsara. It's actually the largest discovery platform for compounds that can modulate autophagy. So we are first and foremost interested in, of course, activating autophagy. So for everyone who doesn't know what autophagy is Greek, and it means self-devouring, and that's essentially what it is, because it's a process of the cells where they devour parts of itself that are not functional anymore, and is producing functional parts again out of this dysfunctional proteins or disentangled proteins. And the thing is, I mean, autophagy is needed in all our body, in all our tissues, in all our cells. And with age, this process is decreasing, or the ability to do autophagy is decreasing. And so cell damage is accumulated in all our body, in all our tissues. And of course, it's harming our body by a lot. And in my opinion, there's no age-related diseases that is not somehow connected to autophagy. So it's a very important topic. By the way, in 2016, the Nobel Prize was given for the discovery of autophagy. And there are not many autophagy companies on the market. The companies that are on the market are all working on the same target that is known for, 15, 20 years. And Samsara has the ability to find new compounds that are triggering autophagy, but also new targets of autophagy, which is very interesting. So, now we have different development programs. I don't want to talk about how many we have, and we have big interest from pharma. So maybe we do a collaboration very soon with a big pharma company, maybe with more than one pharma company. And I think when we can show in one tissue, in one case for one disease, that an autophagy drug works, we have a pretty big breakthrough in the entire longevity field, and I'm very excited about that. And this is a company that we built completely ourselves. So we wanted to build something in the autophagy space, or wanted to do an investment there. We talked to everyone in the field. We looked at a lot of companies, and at the end, we talked to the best scientists in that field. We had them as scientific co-founders, and we built up that company. That means we did everything for the company, from IP negotiations, all the contracts with the CROs. We hired the team. We did research and development plans, indication selection, and so on and so forth. We did the financing, and now we have a great company there. And this is, a very good stereotype or thumbnail of how we do company building at Apollo.
So I just had to Google this real quick. So autophagy is a process by which a cell breaks down and destroys old, damaged, or abnormal proteins and other
Yes.
substances in its cytoplasm. So basically what you're saying is you created this whole product line to be able to do that. And then what is that result thus far that you have seen?
I mean, we have like very, very good data in different disease models. As I said, I can't give you more information on that. But I mean, the data looks amazing. And as I said, I think that the decrease of autophagy, so because autophagy is decreasing with age, so the decrease of autophagy, in my opinion, is the biggest aging factor we know of. So I think that we can use this technology for all kind of age-related diseases. And again, I mean, if you Google heart disease and autophagy, if you Google diabetes and autophagy, if you Google Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, ALS and autophagy, you will have a lot of hits on Google.
Oh, because this is very similar. I was just looking at this ketone, right? Ketone is really big right now. It's like it's a sexy word in the U.S. So getting your body into ketone, basically, it reduces your appetite, helps with fatigue, bad breath, weight loss. Okay, interesting. And so this, someone asked, it looks like, how long do you have to fast until autophagy? Between 24 to 48. So what you're saying is also this directly helps the lifespan of this. How often should someone be aware of this, or like what does that cadence look like?
I mean, with fasting and autophagy, there's a big discussion. The thing is, I mean, you can see, I think in mice, that after 12 hours or something like that, autophagy is triggered when they fast. But the thing is, I mean, mice are much smaller than men, and I think they also die within I don't know how many hours it is, but 72 hours or something like that if they don't eat. So I think autophagy is much quicker triggered in mice than in men. And a lot of people do this 16-8 diet where they only eat 8 hours a day, and they think it will trigger autophagy. By the way, I also do only eat for 8 hours a day, but I don't think that it triggers autophagy. I think autophagy is only triggered after 3 days of fasting. So, I mean, if you can do that, if you can fast, I don't know, 4 days every month or something like that, of course, this is really good for your health. Not only because of autophagy, also because of all kind of blood markers it is beneficial for. But the problem is, I mean, if you're, for example, a VC like me, it's very hard to do that. So you have like business dinners all the time. You're working a lot. You want to have a social life. And if you have a partner, so latest when you have a partner, it's a big problem to fast 4 days every month. Because then when you are home and you have time for your partner or for your family, when you even have family, and then you're like, yeah, we can hang out, but I can't eat with you, it's a big problem, I can tell you.
So you would normally do it for 4 days. That's kind of what you guys recommend, 4 days every month or so. Let me ask you.
Yeah, I would say at least 3 days. At least 3 days. Yeah.
Okay. At what age should you kind of start, prioritizing this a little bit? Because I do know when you're younger, you're in that growth stage. You kind of still need to be eating stuff because your body is whatever. But at what age do you recommend kind of like making this maybe top of mind?
Yeah, of course, I wouldn't recommend it for neither for children nor for teenagers nor for young adults. So I think, for example, with males, males always take a little bit longer than women. So I think the brain is only fully developed with 20 or can take until 26, and I think you can also really see that with males, that some of them, I think my brain was also only fully developed when I was 26. So I wouldn't fast until then, right? And after that, I would say it's safe to fast. And I think if you're fully developed, if your body's in that state, it's always beneficial, I would say. Maybe it's more beneficial when you are older, but I would say with 26, 27, you can start with fasting.
Interesting.
And of course, also depends on your other life choices, right? So
yeah. Well, good. So let's say you do this at like 30, right? 32, 34, where you're
exactly, yeah.
That's that age. You're kind of in a job. You're kind of stressed. You're building a family. There's a lot going on, right? Between 30 to 40, there's been a lot of stress and so forth. And my question is when you start doing this, what is that result on the back end in regards to, like, I don't know if there's a test out there or there's been research that says, hey, when they start doing it at this age, we can see that it's added another 7, 8, 10, maybe 15 years by this certain habit. by fasting 3 or
No,
4 days.
there's no study. There's no study that
No?
is saying that. You can definitely see in your blood work that some parameters, some biomarkers become better. So, for example, your IGF levels are decreasing, which is, I mean, IGF is good for growth, right? It's a growth hormone, but it's in the long term, it's bad for your health. And I think that also, blood fat markers are decreasing. So you can see beneficial effects definitely of fasting in your blood work, but you can't translate that one-to-one to years of life or life extension. That's not. I mean, I'm not aware of a study. If you know one, please send it to me.
Well, no, I don't. That's why I was just curious. That's why I'm asking you. But I appreciate you let me know. I get pumped up because I'm seeing, one, people, I've always been in this thought process. I want to live to like 100, 110, right? We've all heard that, right? Mm-hmm. We want to live this long life, but also you don't want to live in a situation where you're like just a piece of fruit, just kind of crumbled up in a chair somewhere. You want to have lifestyle. You want to enjoy. You want to have some fun. And there's a lot of things that we're seeing that are being developed, that are developed as well. And that's the reason why I appreciate this conversation. And what Apollo Health Ventures, what you guys are doing, being on the forefront, actually investing into these founders, into these teams, and even building it out yourself and working with a lot of LPs to really raise the capital to be able to do that. I just think it's really awesome because I understand it's very, very important. And there have to be people like yourself that know it, that know in and out of it, what's going on, and that kind of the stages, and because there are certain, regulations you have to follow accordingly. But at the end of the day, it is worth it. And I really appreciate being on. For those, Dr. Mensching, for those that want to be, reach out, that want to learn a little bit more about what you got going on, understand this thesis, understand this industry, because maybe they have a story to tell, or maybe they have been in that same situation where it's been impactful. How do they reach out to you and be part of what you got going on?
So we have a lot of, of course, a lot of our LPs are interested in that topic. So, but I don't really understand your question. So you mean if there are a lot of people that reach out to us because we are in the forefront of this industry and they're asking us for help with their lifestyle, or what is your specific question?
No, just how do they reach out to you? How do they be part of what you got going on? If they want to invest with your fund, if they want to engage with your resources and so forth. Yep. How do they reach out to you? I know they can go to apollo.vc. How else?
No, I think most people contact us over LinkedIn, which is possible, but you can also find our email addresses on the website. A lot of people contacting me on conferences as well, but it's very easy to reach us. So the thing is, we are happy to everyone who's joining the space and who's doing investments in that space or is somehow involved in bringing this space forward, and we are happy to talk with them, and we are happy to see if there's some overlap where we can help them again, because our mission, the mission of Apollo, we founded this fund because we really want to make an impact in the industry, and we want to help build up this industry. So as I said, for other funds that are coming into that space, we don't consider them as competition. We consider them as collaborators. And I think the entire industry is like that, which I also really love about this industry. And everyone is working on the same goal. It is a lot of fun to make progress there and to make it together, right? And by the way, we were talking about this, social connections. This is also a kind of social connections. So social connections are very, very important for your longevity, right? If you look to the factors in your environment, social connections are one of the biggest factor for happiness, but also for longevity.
That's awesome. And guys, those links will be in the description below. So make sure you stop what you're doing and make sure you reach out. If you want to invest, if you want to learn a little bit more about this, then I put all those links down in the description. And I really appreciate, Dr. Mensching, I really appreciate you being on here and just adding so much value. And, again, I can't reiterate enough where you're actually on the forefront of this. I am not privy with all this information. You have been in this industry much longer than I have. You've probably seen a lot of evolution and the good up to the right trajectory, which is fun. And guys, if for those that want to reach out, it is apollo.vc as well as LinkedIn. His LinkedIn's down below. Guys, that is the general partner and co-founder of Apollo Health Ventures, my friend, Dr. Mensching. Guys, that is Journey with Christian D. Evans podcast. Until next time, be uncommon if you can.
Thank you.